What happens when humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology, our weapons, or our numbers, but something so simple that even the most advanced alien civilizations never thought to look for it? In a galaxy where every species has found their place through evolution, enhancement, or mechanical augmentation, one human mechanic is about to discover that sometimes the most powerful thing in the universe is what you're born with. When Commander Zara removes her armor in Jex's repair bay, she doesn't just reveal her true form, she reveals a secret that could change the balance of power across every star system. This is the story of how a grease-stained human with calloused hands became the most valuable person in the galaxy, and how an alien warrior learned that strength doesn't always come from the armor you wear. Jex wiped his hands on the oil-stained rag for the third time in 10 minutes, but the grease wouldn't come off. Nothing new there. 20 years working on everything from Centauri freight haulers to vegan scout ships had permanently stained his fingers black. His small repair bay on Station Omega-7 wasn't much to look at, but it kept the bills paid and gave him enough credits to buy decent coffee. The morning had been quiet until the airlock hissed open and she walked in. 7 feet of gleaming armor stepped through his doorway, each footfall making the deck plates ring like a bell. The armor was magnificent, all flowing curves and integrated systems, with a helmet that looked like it belonged on some ancient war god. Power readings flickered across its surface in languages Jex didn't recognize, and he'd seen plenty of alien tech in his time. "You are the mechanic Jex Morrison?" The voice came through external speakers, deep and commanding with that electronic filter that made everything sound important. "That's what the sign says." Jex gestured to the battered placard by his door. "Though most folks just call me Jex. What can I do for you?" The armored figure moved with liquid grace, each step perfectly balanced despite the obvious weight of the suit. "My combat systems require calibration. I am told you have experience with Corvani military hardware." Jex raised an eyebrow. Corvani tech was nasty stuff, built for their endless wars with the hegemony. Most species wouldn't touch it, let alone use it. "I've worked on some Corvani gear, yeah." "What kind of systems are we talking about?" "Integrated weapon platforms. Neural interface acceleration. Regenerative armor plating." The figure paused. "Payment will be substantial." Now that got Jex's attention. He'd been hoping to upgrade his diagnostic equipment for months, but good scanners cost more than his bay made in a year. "How substantial?" A small device materialized in the armored hand, credits dancing across its display. Jex's eyes widened. That was more money than he'd seen since ever. "All right, you've got my attention. Let's take a look at what we're working with." The armored figure moved to the center of the bay, and Jex fired up his scanners. The readings that came back made him whistle low. This wasn't just Corvani tech. There were vegan neural accelerators, Centauri power cores, and what looked like experimental shielding from the Outer Rim territories. Whoever was wearing this armor had either unlimited resources or very flexible morals. "This is some serious hardware," Jex said, walking around the figure with his scanner in hand. "Most of this stuff isn't even supposed to exist. Where did you get integrated vegan neural interfaces?" "Last I heard, they'd rather die than share that technology." "That is not your concern." "Fair enough." Jex had learned long ago not to ask too many questions about where expensive tech came from. Credits were credits, and his curiosity had gotten him in trouble before. "The neural interfaces are running hot," he said, pointing to his scanner readings. "See this? You're pulling way more power than the system was designed for. Keep pushing it like this and you'll fry your brainstem. The performance is necessary. Performance doesn't mean much if you're dead." Jex moved to his workbench and started pulling out tools. "I can recalibrate the power flow, maybe install some better cooling systems. But I'll need to access the internal components." The armored figure went very still. "Internal access is not possible." "Look, friend, I can't fix what I can't see. This kind of integration work requires hands-on calibration. The neural interfaces alone have about 50 connection points that need individual adjustment." "You do not understand. The armor cannot be removed. Jax looked up from his tools. Can't be removed? What do you mean, can't be removed? It is integrated with my physiology. Removal would result in death. Now that was interesting. Jax had heard rumors about that kind of technology, cybernetic integration so complete that the user became dependent on their hardware. It was supposed to be theoretical, something the research stations played with but never actually implemented. Okay, that complicates things. Jax scratched his head, leaving another grease mark in his brown hair. But, even with full integration, there should be maintenance ports. Emergency access panels. Something. There are none. That's impossible. Every piece of military hardware has emergency protocols. Jax walked around the figure again, this time looking more carefully. Even if the integration is complete, the manufacturers would have built in some kind of maintenance access. They'd have to. He ran his scanner over every inch of the armor, looking for hidden seams or access ports. The readings showed incredibly sophisticated tech, but also something else. Something that made him frown and run the scan again. Ha! That's weird. The armored head turned toward him. What is weird? These readings. The life support systems show atmospheric recycling, temperature regulation, all the stuff you'd expect. But, the readings for what's inside. Jax paused, checking his scanner again. Are you sure this armor can't come off? I am certain. Because according to my instruments, whatever's inside that armor is breathing standard atmosphere. No exotic gas mixtures, no environmental modifications. Just regular oxygen and nitrogen. Jax looked up at the imposing helmet. What species are you, anyway? The figure didn't answer for a long moment. When it did speak, there was something different in the electronic voice. Something almost like uncertainty. I am Corvani. Jax knew that was a lie. He'd worked on enough Corvani equipment to know their biological requirements. They breathed methane-based atmospheres and had body temperatures that would freeze human blood. This armor was maintaining an environment that would kill a Corvani in minutes. But, he didn't call the lie out. Instead, he nodded and went back to his scanner readings. Well, Corvani tech is tricky stuff. Let me see what I can do from the outside. For the next hour, Jax worked on the external systems he could access. He recalibrated power flows, updated software protocols, and replaced a few worn components. It was good work, the kind of complex problem-solving he'd always enjoyed. But, the whole time, he was thinking about those atmospheric readings. There, he said finally, stepping back from the armor. That should help with the overheating issues. The neural interfaces are running at about 80% of previous power levels, but the efficiency improvements should actually give you better response times. The armored figure moved, flexing what looked like incredibly sophisticated servo-assisted joints. The improvement is noticeable. You have my thanks. Just doing my job. Jax wiped his hands on his rag again. But, I have to ask, if you don't mind. The atmospheric readings I'm getting, they don't match up with what I know about Corvani biology. Are you sure you're not running some kind of specialized life support system? The figure went still again. What are you implying? I'm not implying anything. I'm just curious about the tech. Jax kept his voice casual. I've never seen environmental systems that sophisticated. If you've got some new kind of Corvani adaptation, it might be useful information for future repairs. There is no adaptation. The electronic voice was flat, final. But, Jax caught something underneath it, something the voice filters couldn't quite hide. Fear? Uncertainty? He'd spent enough time around all kinds of species to recognize when someone was hiding something important. Fair enough, he said. Like I said, just curious. The credits transferred to his account with a soft chime, and Jax had to resist the urge to check the balance again. This job would keep his bay running for months. The work is satisfactory, the armored figure said. I may have additional requirements in the future. You know where to find me. The figure moved toward the airlock, then paused. You ask many questions, mechanic. Occupational hazard. Hard to fix things without understanding how they work. Some things are better left unknown. The armored figure left without another word, but Jack stood in his bay for a long time afterward, thinking about atmospheric readings and lies told in electronic voices. Whatever had just walked out of his shop, it wasn't Corvani. And if he was reading the life support data correctly, it might not be alien at all. 3 days later, she came back. This time there was urgency in the way the armored figure moved, a slight hitch in the previously perfect gait that told Jack something was wrong. The armor's surface showed scorch marks and what looked like impact damage from energy weapons. I require immediate assistance, the electronic voice said without preamble. Jax looked up from the engine component he'd been rebuilding. What happened to you? Combat. The armor's systems have been compromised. How bad? Life support is functioning at 60% capacity. Weapon systems are offline. Neural interface is experiencing significant lag. Jack set down his tools and fired up his scanners. The readings were much worse than 3 days ago. Power systems were fluctuating, several major components were showing red warnings, and the atmospheric controls were struggling to maintain stable conditions. This is serious damage, Jack said, walking around the armor to get a complete scan. What did you run into? A Hegemony battlecruiser. Close. Hegemony strike team. And you survived? Impressive. Jack studied his readings. But I'm seeing some problems I can't fix from the outside. That neural interface damage is deep, probably caused by feedback from the weapons systems overloading. I need to get to the primary connection points. That is not possible. Look, I told you last time that some repairs require internal access. This is one of them. Jax pointed to his scanner display. See this? The neural interface is developing microfractures. Keep using it like this and you'll have a complete system failure. How long? Hard to say. Maybe a few days, maybe a few hours. Depends on how much stress you put on the system. The armored figure stood silent for a long moment. Jax could hear the soft hum of internal systems working harder than they should, the subtle vibration of a machine being pushed beyond its limits. There must be another way, the electronic voice finally said. I'm sorry, but there isn't. The kind of damage you've got can only be fixed with direct access to the components. Jax's voice was gentle but firm. I know you said the armor can't come off, but maybe there are emergency protocols? Maintenance modes? You do not understand the situation. Then, explain it to me. Another long silence. When the figure spoke again, there was something new in the voice. Something that sounded almost like desperation. If the armor is removed, others will know what I am. And there it was. The real reason for all the secrecy. Jax had suspected, but now he was certain. What you are, he said quietly, not who you are. The armored head turned toward him sharply. Your atmospheric readings, Jax continued. Standard oxygen-nitrogen mix, Earth normal pressure and temperature. The kind of environment that would kill a Corvani but keep a human comfortable. The silence stretched between them like a held breath. The armored figure remained perfectly still for what felt like an hour but was probably only seconds. Jax could hear his own heartbeat in the silence, and the steady hum of station life support systems seemed unnaturally loud. He'd made his guess, and now he had to live with whatever came next. You are perceptive, mechanic. The electronic voice was different now, quieter somehow despite the mechanical filtering. Perhaps too perceptive for your own safety. I'm just good at reading scanner data. Jax kept his voice calm, though his pulse was racing. And I've been around enough different species to know their environmental requirements. What do you intend to do with this knowledge? The question hung in the air like a threat. Jax realized he was standing 3 feet away from someone who had just survived a fight with a hegemony strike team, someone wearing enough integrated weaponry to level his entire repair bay. Someone who had very good reasons to keep their identity secret. "Fix your armor," he said simply. "That's what you're paying me for." "That is all?" "That's all." Jex moved back to his workbench, trying to project calm he didn't entirely feel. "Look, I don't know what game you're playing, and, honestly, I don't want to know. You've got damaged equipment that needs repair. I've got the skills to fix it. Everything else is none of my business." The armored figure watched him for another long moment. "You understand that this information could be valuable. There are those who would pay well for the location of a human warrior." "Probably." Jex selected a neural interface calibration tool and checked its settings. "But, I'm a mechanic, not a spy. I fix things. That's what I do. Why should I trust you?" Now that was a fair question. Jex thought about it while he prepared his equipment. Why should she trust him? He was a stranger, a human working on the edge of civilized space, someone who could disappear tomorrow if the credits were right. "Because," he said finally, "I've been working on alien tech for 20 years, and I've never once sold information about my clients. Not to the hegemony, not to the Confederacy, not to anyone. My reputation is built on discretion. That could change." "Could. Won't." Jex met the armored helmet's gaze, or at least where he thought the eyes might be. "I've seen plenty of secrets in my time. Weapons that officially don't exist, ships flying under false registrations, people who aren't who they claim to be. Know what I've learned? Secrets have a way of taking care of themselves. The only thing I control is whether I do good work or not." The figure was quiet for a long time. Jex could hear the soft cycling of atmospheric processors, the subtle whir of servo motors making constant micro-adjustments to keep the armor perfectly balanced. It was sophisticated technology, the kind that required serious resources and serious skills to maintain. "There are others," the electronic voice said finally. "Others who would kill to know what you know. Then, we'd better make sure your armor doesn't fail." Jex held up his scanner. "Because the only way I can fix this damage is from the inside. That means the armor has to come off. You do not understand what you are asking. Then, explain it to me." Another pause. When the voice came again, it was barely above a whisper, even through the electronic filtering. "I am the only one." 3 words that carried more weight than Jex had expected. He set down his tools and really looked at the armored figure, seeing past the intimidating technology to what might be underneath. "The only human in Corvani service?" he asked. "The only human in any alien military force? The only human to achieve rank in their hierarchy? The only human they trust with their advanced technology?" The electronic voice carried a note of something that might have been pride, or might have been exhaustion. "I am Commander Zara Chen of the Corvani 5th Fleet. And, if they discover what I truly am, it will mean war." The implications hit Jex like a shock wave. The Corvani-human relationship was complicated at best, tense neutrality held together by trade agreements and mutual fear of the hegemony. If it came out that a human had infiltrated their military, had gained access to their most advanced technology. "Holy hell," he breathed. "How long have you been undercover?" 12 years. 12 years living as something she wasn't, hidden inside armor that had become as much prison as protection. Jex tried to imagine what that would do to someone, the isolation and constant fear of discovery. "And the armor really can't come off?" The integration process was extensive. The Corvani believed their warriors should be one with their equipment. The neural interfaces, the life support systems, the identity verification protocols, they're all designed to prevent removal. But, not to prevent maintenance. No. But, maintenance is performed by Corvani technicians who understand the biology involved. They have specialized tools, protocols designed for their physiology. Jex nodded slowly. "Which you don't have. Which I cannot access without revealing what I am." Now Jex understood the real problem. It wasn't just that the armor couldn't come off. It was that removing it would require admitting she wasn't what she appeared to be. Okay, he said. Let's think about this differently. What if we could modify the removal protocols? Make them work with human physiology instead of Corvani? Is such a thing possible? Maybe. I'd need to see the integration points, understand how the connections work. Jax pulled up his scanner readings again. From what I can tell, the neural interfaces are the main issue. If we could safely disconnect those, the rest should be manageable. The armored figure was quiet for a long moment. You would do this? Knowing the risks? What risks? If we are discovered, if this information becomes public, you would be marked for death by multiple governments. The Corvani would see you as an accomplice to espionage. The human authorities would consider you a traitor. Jex considered this. It was a fair point. Getting involved in interstellar politics was exactly the kind of trouble he'd spent 20 years avoiding. But, looking at the damaged armor, listening to the strain in the electronic voice, he found himself thinking about 12 years of isolation and the kind of courage it would take to live that way. Yeah, well, he said finally. Maybe it's time I did something more important than fixing engines. The helmet turned toward him. You would risk everything to help someone you barely know? I'd risk everything to fix something that's broken. Jex picked up his tools again. And, you, Commander Chen, are definitely broken. There might have been a laugh behind the electronic filtering, though it was hard to tell. Very well. But, if we do this, we do it properly. Full environmental isolation, encrypted communications, no records of any kind. Understood. Jex moved to his workstation and began pulling out equipment he hadn't used in years. Clean room protocols, biometric scanners, neural interface adapters he'd acquired through channels he preferred not to think about. This is going to take some time. And, it's going to hurt. Pain I can handle. Not physical pain. Well, not just physical pain. Jex looked up from his preparations. You've been integrated with that armor for 12 years. Removing it is going to feel like losing a limb. Maybe worse. I understand. But, Jex wasn't sure she did. Neural integration wasn't just about physical connections. After 12 years, the armor would feel like part of her body, its sensors like additional senses, its strength like her own. Removing it would be traumatic in ways that went far beyond the technical challenges. There's something else, he said. Once the armor comes off, you're going to be vulnerable. Really vulnerable. No enhanced strength, no integrated weapons, no armor plating. Just human. Just human, the electronic voice repeated. You say that like it is a weakness. Isn't it? Compared to what you've been? The armored figure moved to the center of his bay and stood perfectly still. For a moment, Jex thought she might be reconsidering, might walk away and find some other solution. Then, the armor began to change. Panels slid aside to reveal connection ports. Diagnostic displays activated across the surface. Warning lights began blinking as security protocols engaged. Commander, Jex said quietly. Are you sure about this? I have been sure about very little for 12 years, mechanic. But, I am tired of being afraid of what I am. The armor's systems began powering down in sequence, life support switching to emergency backup, weapon systems going offline, neural interfaces preparing for disconnection. Jex watched the readings on his scanner and felt a chill run down his spine. What changed your mind? He asked. Yesterday, during the fight with the Hegemony strike team, I realized something. The electronic voice was growing fainter as the armor's power levels dropped. I have spent 12 years proving that humans can be as strong as any Corvani warrior. But, I forgot that being human might be strength enough. The final connections began to disengage, and Jex heard something new in the electronic voice. Something he hadn't heard before despite hours of conversation. He heard Commander Zara Chen's actual voice, unfiltered and human, for the first time. Help me remember what that feels like, she said. The removal process took 4 hours. Jex had performed complex repairs before, delicate work on neural interfaces and cybernetic implants, but nothing like this. Each connection point required individual calibration, careful adjustment of power flows to prevent shock or permanent damage. The armor's systems fought him every step of the way, security protocols demanding biometric verification he couldn't provide, failsafes triggering alarms that filled his bay with flashing lights. Commander Chen endured it all in silence. The neural interfaces were the worst part. 12 years of integration had created neural pathways that existed nowhere in human anatomy textbooks, connections so sophisticated that removing them safely required mapping each individual nerve cluster. Jex found himself working with tools he'd never used, following instincts built from decades of troubleshooting impossible problems. Almost there, he murmured, hands steady despite the magnitude of what he was attempting. Just a few more connections and we can start the separation sequence. He couldn't hear her responses anymore. The armor's communication systems had been among the first things to shut down, leaving only the soft hum of life support and the occasional status beep from his equipment. But he could see her vital signs on his medical scanner, elevated but stable, and that was enough. The final neural interface disconnected with a soft click that seemed too quiet for something so significant. Okay, Jex said, stepping back to check his readings. All neural connections are severed. Life support has been transferred to backup systems. The armor should release in 3, 2, 1. The armor opened like a flower. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time, layers of sophisticated technology peeling away to reveal the person hidden inside. Jex found himself holding his breath as the helmet retracted, the chest plate split along invisible seams, and the limb coverings detached with precise mechanical movements. And then he saw her. Commander Zara Chen was smaller than the armor had made her appear, maybe 5.5 feet tall, with short black hair plastered to her head with sweat and skin that looked pale from years without sunlight. She was wearing a thin bodysuit covered with connection ports and monitoring sensors, and when she tried to stand, her legs buckled immediately. Jex caught her before she hit the deck. Easy, he said, supporting her weight as she struggled to find her balance. You've been in that armor for 12 years. Your muscles aren't going to remember how to work right away. She looked up at him with dark eyes that seemed too large in her thin face, and Jex realized she was crying. I can feel my skin, she whispered. I can feel the air. For someone who had spent 12 years sealed inside mechanical perfection, the sensation of air moving across exposed skin must have been overwhelming. Jex helped her to a chair and gave her a moment to adjust, watching as she flexed fingers that no longer had servo-assisted strength, moved arms that responded only to her own muscle power. How do you feel? He asked. Weak. She laughed, and the sound was nothing like the electronic voice he'd grown used to. It was human, vulnerable, real. Incredibly, impossibly weak. And wonderful. Jex looked back at the empty armor, now just an elaborate metal sculpture without its occupant. That thing must have given you the strength of 10 people. 20, actually. Enhanced reflexes, integrated targeting systems, enough firepower to level a building. Zara flexed her hands again, staring at them as if she'd never seen them before. I could run through walls, survive in hard vacuum, process information faster than any human brain should be capable of. And now I'm just me. She stood carefully, testing her balance. No enhanced anything. No weapons systems. No armor plating. She met his eyes. And I've never felt more powerful. That surprised him. How do you figure? Zara walked slowly around his repair bay, still adjusting to movement without mechanical assistance. Do you know why the Corvani accepted me in their military? I figured they didn't know you were human. Oh, they knew. They've always known. She touched one of his workbenches, fingers trailing across the metal surface. The Corvani have a concept called Kethvara. It translates roughly to strength through adaptation. They believe that true warriors are those who can overcome their biological limitations through technology. Jex frowned. So they accepted you because you were willing to undergo the armor integration? They accepted me because no other species had ever survived it. Zara's voice was quiet, matter of fact. The integration process has a 93% fatality rate. Most species die during the neural connection phase. Others suffer permanent brain damage. The Corvani themselves can only achieve partial integration. The implications hit Jex like a cold wave. You're saying humans are the only species that can survive full integration? I'm saying I was the first to try and live through it. Zara turned to face him. For 12 years, the Corvani have believed that human adaptability is our greatest strength. That we excel because we can become something more than what we were born to be. And, you don't believe that? Zara gestured to the empty armor. That thing turned me into the perfect Corvani warrior. Stronger, faster, more resilient than any biological entity. But, it couldn't make me Corvani. She walked to the viewport that looked out over Station Omega-7's docking bays, where ships from a dozen different species came and went in a constant ballet of interstellar commerce. During the fight with the Hegemony Strike Team, my squad was outnumbered 3-1. Standard Corvani tactical doctrine called for withdrawal and regrouping. The logical choice, given the circumstances. But, you didn't withdraw. I couldn't. Not because the armor wouldn't let me, but because 3 Corvani civilians were trapped in the crossfire. The armor's tactical systems calculated their survival chances at less than 12%. Acceptable losses, according to Corvani military thinking. Jex was beginning to understand. But, not according to human thinking. I violated direct orders. Broke formation. Used myself as bait to draw the hegemony forces away from the civilians. Zara's reflection smiled in the viewport. The armor's systems registered it as tactical insanity. A 97% probability of mission failure. But, it worked. It worked because I stopped thinking like a Corvani warrior and started thinking like a human being. She turned back to him. The armor gave me incredible capabilities, but it was my humanity that decided how to use them. Jex looked at the sophisticated technology scattered across his bay, then, at the woman who had shed it like a skin she'd outgrown. So what happens now? You can't go back to the Corvani military without the armor. No, I can't. Zara's voice carried no regret. And, I can't go home to human space either. Too many secrets, too much classified information. I'm caught between 2 worlds. That sounds lonely. It is. But, it's also freedom. She moved to the empty armor and placed a hand on its chest plate. For 12 years, I defined myself by what I could become. Today, I'm choosing to define myself by what I am. A soft chime from Jex's communication console interrupted them. He glanced at the display and felt his stomach drop. 3 ships had just entered the station's traffic control zone. Corvani design, military configuration, broadcasting priority codes that demanded immediate docking clearance. They found you, he said. Zara looked at the display and nodded calmly. My armor's distress beacon. I forgot about the automated transmission protocols. She studied the ship configurations on the screen. 5th Fleet Response Team. They'll have orders to recover me at any cost. How long do we have? 20 minutes, maybe less. Zara looked around the repair bay. Is there another way out of here? Jex shook his head. This is Station Omega-7, not a smuggler's den. There's the main docking bay and emergency access through the cargo holds, but they'll have both covered. Then, I suppose I'll have to face them. The calm acceptance in her voice amazed him. After everything she'd been through, everything she'd sacrificed, she was ready to walk into certain captivity or death without a hint of panic. Wait, Jex said. There might be another option. He moved to his equipment locker and pulled out a small device he'd hoped never to use. Emergency transponder, military grade, with enough encryption to hide a ship's signature from most scanning systems. I've got a ship, he said. Nothing fancy, just a converted cargo hauler I use for parts runs. But, it's fast and the stealth systems still work. Zara stared at the transponder. You're offering to help me escape? I'm offering to help you disappear. Jex checked the device's power level. New identity, clean ship registration, passage to wherever you want to go. The Rim territories, maybe, or one of the independent systems. That would make you an accomplice to desertion. The Corvani would put a price on your head. Let them. Jex pocketed the transponder and started gathering essential tools. I told you I'd been thinking about doing something more important than fixing engines. And what if I don't want to disappear? What if I want to go back to human space and tell them what I've learned? Jex paused in his packing. Do you? Zara was quiet for a moment, considering. No. Not yet. There are others out there, other humans serving in alien militaries, hiding what they are to survive. They need to know they have choices. Others like you? More than you might think. Humans have been spreading across the galaxy for generations, adapting to survive wherever we find ourselves. Some become traders, some become farmers, some become warriors. She gestured to the empty armor. But we all make the same mistake. We try to become something else instead of embracing what we already are. The communication console chimed again. The Corvani ships were requesting docking permission for a priority military operation. Time to go, Jex said. They made it to the cargo bay in 12 minutes, moving through maintenance corridors that Jex knew better than anyone else on the station. His ship was exactly where he'd left it, a battered freighter that looked like a dozen others scattered throughout the docking bay. As they prepped for departure, Zara stood in the cockpit looking back at Station Omega 7. 12 years, she said quietly. Any regrets? Only one. She turned to him with a smile that transformed her entire face. I should have taken the armor off sooner. The ship lifted off just as Corvani security teams stormed Jex's repair bay. By the time they realized what had happened, the freighter was already jumping to hyperspace, its emergency transponder broadcasting the signature of a routine cargo run to the outer colonies. 3 days later, they were sitting in a cantina on Freeport Station, watching news feeds from across the galaxy. The story was everywhere. A Corvani military commander had vanished during a classified operation, taking advanced technology with them. The Corvani government was offering substantial rewards for information, while human authorities denied any knowledge of the incident. Think they'll find us? Jex asked. Zara sipped her drink and smiled. They're looking for a 7-foot armored warrior. Not a mechanic and his passenger. And what happens next? Next, we start looking for the others. The humans who think they have to hide what they are to survive. Zara's voice carried a note of determination that reminded Jex why she'd been such an effective commander. It's time they learned what you taught me. What's that? Sometimes the most powerful thing you can be is exactly what you were born to be. Jex raised his glass. To being human. To being human, Zara agreed. Outside the cantina's viewport, ships from 100 different worlds moved through the traffic lanes of Freeport Station. Among them, barely noticeable in the crowd, humans worked as pilots, traders, engineers, and explorers. They adapted to alien cultures, learned alien languages, found their place in a galaxy that was vast beyond imagination. And, some of them, Jex realized, were just beginning to understand that adaptation didn't mean abandonment of self. It meant becoming the best version of what they already were. The mechanic and the commander sat in comfortable silence, two humans who had found each other in the infinite darkness between stars, proof that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from the armor you wear, but from the courage to take it off.